So Google reviews has been something that dentists have been prioritizing, and it's a good thing, but I think there's a lot of misconceptions that I want to clear up in this video today. So the first thing that comes to mind is the idea of negative review removal. I've been reached out to a couple times asking if I could help take down a negative review that someone left, whether it was because that review was false, they exaggerated it, or whatever. But when it comes to removals, it used to be more possible back in the day, but today it's very difficult. And platforms like Google and Yelp will usually side with the reviewer unless there is a clear violation of their terms of service. So you want to take a look at each platform has their own summary, and you could take a look at it. There's like 11 or something points depending on your platform. And it will be things like there are obscene language. It is clearly fraudulent. It is a competitor. It is not a reflection of someone's actual experience. Whatever that might be, there has to be a terms of service violation that you can pinpoint and have it be obviously a violation. Otherwise, you're going to have a very hard time removing the review, and that's just the nature of review platforms today. So how you want to counteract that is by focusing on generating positive reviews, which is what we'll talk about in this video as well. Another misconception is that the 5.0, the perfect 5-star review is the goal. And I've seen practice owners stress out because they received a 3-star or their reviews are dipping a bit. But research also shows, the data shows that 4.7 to 4.9 is kind of the optimal range of reviews. 5.0s are viewed a little skeptically. And so and from 4.2 is where trust is built. But 4.7 to 4.9 is sort of the optimal range for when it comes to people actually creating trust and creating forward motion and actually booking or scheduling an appointment with you. So don't stress too much about the 5.0 and instead just focus on getting good reviews. And what I've noticed is that because they focus so much on 5.0s, this actually prevents practices from asking people who they think might give them a 4.0 to leave a review. And so what this does is it reduces the total volume of reviews that the practice ultimately gets. And what we're seeing, that volume is actually more important than the actual rating. As long as you keep it in the 4.7 to 4.9 range, then it should be volume that you go for. So how do you know how many reviews you need? Well, there is a diminishing return when it comes to the number of reviews that you get. The number of reviews isn't going to give you more exposure. It's not going to suddenly make your office start showing up for searches in different cities. But what it will do is give you the competitive angle when people are comparing different practices. So I would say that take a look at your top competitors, the people who would be choosing between. So if you are heavily into insurance and that's your patient base, you don't necessarily want to be looking at fee-for-service practices and vice versa. If you're fee-for-service, you don't want to necessarily be comparing yourself with insurance-based companies or insurance-based practices, because when people are comparing, they won't necessarily be comparing the two of you. So look at the people who they would see as alternatives and see how many reviews they have. What's the total volume? What's the number of reviews that they have? And to be competitive with them, you should have somewhere around 80% of the actual reviews that they have. And if you want to be really pushing forward and be considered higher, then maybe look for about 120% of the reviews. But anything more than that, it's really not going to be much of a difference. The main things that are going to matter more is the specificity of the review and the positioning. What kind of practice are you? What are you known for? And that's going to matter way more than the actual number of reviews or the rating itself. Because you can go to, like, let's say you're looking for a restaurant. You have a Thai restaurant with 400 reviews and you have a Chinese restaurant with 200 reviews. Well, if you're feeling like Chinese food, the Thai restaurant isn't going to be really a concern. So positioning matters a bit more than the actual volume and rating of reviews. So just keep that in mind as well. Okay, so the generation itself. A lot of generation So there's two things I think we want to cover here is incentivizing reviews and also how to get the reviews. Like what are we doing to actually get the reviews? So they kind of go hand in hand, but a lot of practices rely on software, automated software like Birdeye or Weave to request reviews. But usually the software should serve as a backstop, as a follow-up, rather than the actual point of requesting a review. The requesting of a review should happen in the office, typically right after a very good moment that the patient had. So let's say they just completed treatment, or let's say they just, for some reason, felt a very positive emotion. Maybe they walked in and noticed something very great that they found that this practice was just for them. When their emotion peaks, that's when right after that is when you want to ask for the review. And we also need to practice how we ask for the review. So there's a couple of phrases that you should start to develop yourself as to how can you bring up the topic of a review, how can your staff, how can hygiene bring up review in a way that is natural and that they can keep in the back of their minds whenever they notice that someone is going through a very positive emotional peak. All right, and now we go into incentives. So just to recap that point a bit, the timing of the reviews should happen in-house after an emotional peak from staff, and it shouldn't, software and follow-ups should serve as just backup. It shouldn't be the primary way that reviews are generated. Okay, so now we go on into incentives. So a lot of practices use incentives to get more reviews. They incentivize using Starbucks gift cards with raffles, with the Wheel of Fortune thing that you spin and you can get a prize. And technically, all of these are against Google's terms of service. And it used to be something that was largely ignored by Google and Yelp. But recently there have been more crackdowns. I think in 2024, something like 20 million or so reviews were taken down. And even the FTC, they are cracking down on this as well, with each case of an incentivized review leading up to more than $50,000 in fines. So this is something very serious that I don't think we should be looking at anymore. But incentives, I think, should be transferred to the teams. So how can you, which is totally within the policies of both platforms of Google and Yelp, this is totally a legal move, is that you can incentivize your teams to be on top of reviews, to make sure that they're attentive to patients when they are experiencing a good moment, and to leverage that into a moment where they ask for reviews. So the budget that you might have had for incentivizing each individual patient, you can now take that and move it into your team and incentivize them, create like a prize pool, create maybe a vacation, tickets or whatever for whoever gets to, or whoever wins that month or that semi-annual or whatever contest. And you can lay out the rules. Here is how you get a check mark next to your name. Someone has to mention you in the review or whatever that might be. And you also look at the math. If, let's say, you're spending $2,000, let's say annually you have a budget of $2,000 for reviews, and those reviews generate, or because of that competition, it generates you 200 reviews, let's say. So about $10 a review. Well, if those 200 reviews bring in about, like 4 patients, you are in pretty good shape. And likely it's going to do more than that. So typically the ROI of incentivizing your team, or the ROI of incentivizing review made a lot of sense because the math worked out. But since we can't do that, if you're incentivizing your team, I'm saying that the math will still work out and it's a more ethical and fair way of doing stuff. All right, so that's it for reviews. First is to understand that negative reviews aren't going away. They're not something you go away with. Oh, and I also want to add, how you respond to reviews is very important, because how you respond to positive reviews, where you confirm a story, the narrative that the patients are trying to paint, because what reviews are just patients telling stories about what kind of practice this is. And if you're able to respond in a way that confirms that, that's good. But how you respond to negative reviews is also incredibly important, because how you deal, look, everyone makes mistakes, even practices, And how you deal with mistakes and how you deal with shortcomings, it says a lot more about someone than always being right. So when you, or showing the side of you that is always right. So when you make a mistake, when someone leaves a negative review, the character and how you respond and how you deal with that review matters a lot more than you might think, because people are looking for negative reviews and they're trying to see the shortcomings. And if it comes paired with a response from you, that is a much more powerful way to control the narrative, not because you want to be controlling, but because you want to give people the full picture. And so this is something that I would recommend, is to acknowledge the negative review, invite them offline, invite them to a conversation offline, like contact us, and show character, and don't be defensive. Don't try to like fight back online, and you won't win arguments when you're looking like you're defensive. Instead, just acknowledge, take it offline, and show some character in your response as well. All right. Yeah, that's it for today's video, just on reviews. Don't try to think that you can remove all negative reviews. It's going to be a waste of time and money. There's a lot of people who claim they can do that, but trust me, I have tried as well, and it's not something that is doable. Don't seek to incentivize reviews. Don't focus on creating a 5.0 and being very stingy with who you ask reviews from, because what matters more is volume. But what matters, and we want to compare volume to your alternatives, not anyone who's a dentist. And what matters more than volume is actually your positioning, is what kind of practice you are. Again, with the Thai restaurant and the Chinese restaurant analogy. And when it comes to incentives, when you're looking to generate more reviews, don't focus on incentivizing the patients, because there will be crackdowns. You will lose those reviews. You will get your Google Business or Yelp account penalized or even banned. And there possibly may be some FTC issues and you paying fines. Instead, move that incentive over to the teams, have them create some friendly competition within the team, and you'll see a lot of good results there. And respond to reviews. All right, so for today's video, hope you liked it. See you in the next one.